So I'm sitting in my kitchenette and I decided that I wanted to lime plaster this whole kitchenette. I had just previously done a Tadelakt project, which you can find the video to that on my channel, or I'll try and find a way to pop it up in the screen or something. And that was a really intense project. It was just super time intensive, kind of expensive, and there was just, I felt like a lot of stages to the journey. And frankly, I didn't really want to do that for everything in here. I wanted to plaster the stairs, I wanted to plaster the countertops, I wanted to do a plastered sink, I wanted to do all the walls in plaster. The problem was that I could obviously find lime plaster, but I didn't know exactly how to seal it, because if you do, like, let's say on a floor, or if you do it on a countertop or a sink, there's gonna be a lot of water that gets involved. And so plaster is very porous, so it'll suck up anything that gets spilled on it. And with water, it would just become discolored for a while and eventually dry out, but it just isn't, you wanna seal it, right? And so while I was doing my concrete project, which I have another video on, maybe I'll pop that up over here or something, I discovered a polyurethane that worked really, really well. That in 2 coats, it sealed the concrete, so it wouldn't absorb any like coffee stains or wine stains or anything like that, which would discolor the floor permanently. There's no way to take out a stain like that after the fact. And so I thought, well, in theory, they're both porous and they're both finishes. I should be able to put this polyurethane on it, and it worked. So I wanted to show you how I did that. And so yeah, let's get started.
So I started by taping my edges, just so I didn't get any unwanted plaster on the roof rafters or the ceiling joists. And so the first step is to make your color pigment. So if you've seen any of my other videos, this will look very familiar, because I wanted everything to look the same color-wise. So I did this 100 grams of umber to 25 grams of flax for a 5-gallon bucket of plaster. You can purchase all this stuff on the Limestrong website, which is where I got it from. So first you add your color pigmentation and water together before you add any plaster, so that way the color pigmentation is really mixed up. I bought some Limestrong Finish from Limestrong Build, and you add it in bits and pieces. You don't do the whole bag at once. You do probably a quarter of the bag, you mix it up, add water, do another quarter of the bag, add water, mix it up. It just makes it easier to get all of the dry product mixed in with the water, so you have a nice consistency when you're done. You'll use about 8 liters of water for a 5-gallon bucket of plaster. And again, scraping the sides to make sure you don't leave any of the product left in the bucket. So you'll need a hawk and a taping knife to scoop your plaster onto. And I use the trusty magic trowel, my go-to, and because magic trowel tends to leave no trowel lines. And this is the consistency that you want your plaster, that I had it. It was easy for application, nice and thick, not running off the hawk super easily. And once you're ready, you get going. And as you can see, you just apply it the way you would any other plaster. It'd be a lot faster if you applied it with the steel trowel, but for me, not having any trowel lines is just easier using the magic trowel, so that it takes a little bit longer, but I find that I'm happy with the results. So with that said, I still did have some bumps and ridges and things like that I wanted to smooth out, so I sanded it once it dried. The smarter way to do this would be to, while it's still drying and not completely dry yet, you could use a sponge to kind of smooth out any of the ridges on your plaster. So after the plaster had dried, I found that the color was pretty flat, and it didn't have that sort of unique look that I like with lime wash. So I decided to lime wash over my plaster. A lot of people ask, why did you lime wash over the plaster? And for me, it's because it gives it more depth of color. It's the plaster kind of settled flat, pretty flat, and so I wanted to add a little bit more contrast to the walls. So once everything was dried and it was time to seal it, I was using this sealer like I had done in my previous video, but it actually didn't repel water very well. So I ended up going over, I ended up buying this right here, this Surecrete DK400WB. It's a 2-part process that you mix together, and it was much stronger and much more secure. So I would suggest using that to seal your plaster. And so once you've applied the polyurethane and it's dried, you can go back over it with a second coat, and that cured polyurethane is really strong.
The last thing I'll say is that when I did the plaster, it was kind of a one single color. It didn't have a lot of modulation the way that the lime wash that I've done has. And when I applied the polyurethane with the brush, the same bristled brush that you use for lime washing, it added this texture. It had darkness and lightness to it based off of where the polyurethane went on a little thicker, and it gave the finish a really nice sheen and waterproofing and color movement. So I actually think that it benefited me by applying this polyurethane to the plastered walls and the plastered floor and the plastered countertop. So hope you enjoy, and yeah, be seeing you soon on the next project. Thanks for watching.